What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Clint from the Die Hard MMA podcast, and this is the Total Takedown for UFC Vegas 38, brought to you by Pub Sports Radio. Smash that like button for me. Give the video a share out if you don't mind, and of course, comment your favorite total down below so we know what you're on for Saturday. We already picked our sides. We already broke down this entire card top to bottom on the Monday episode of the show, so make sure you click on that. That will be in the description below as well. Right now, what we're going to do is talk about how long we think each fight is going to last. Instead of picking a winning fighter, we're going to look at over 1.5, under 2.5. Are we betting on violence? Let's dig straight on into this bad boy. Kicking the night off, we have got a bantamweight fight. Alejandro Perez taking on JohnnyEduardo. And what we've got here is a total, it looks like, of 2.5. Now, the line opened up at a straight pick'em, but since money has come in on the under 2.5, and it looks like we got about minus 140 under 2.5, plus 120 to the over 2.5, and I love violence in this first bet of the night. Alejandro Perez is a guy that's been on a long layoff, but he was a very hyped prospect before he got knocked out by Song, and since then, he's taken the time to let his body recover and heal. He's taken on JohnnyEduardo, a really round one or bust type of fighter. This guy comes out and he looks for blood early. Heavy hands, big power, slick jiu-jitsu, rolls for heel hooks, but as soon as he doesn't have the victory sealed up, he takes his ball and he goes home. So someone like Alejandro Perez, if he's able to weather that early storm, I expect him to come back by knockout with sharper, crisper boxing, and this guy's got power. Don't underestimate Alejandro Perez's power. So while I would be picking Perez by knockout if I was going to predict this fight, JohnnyEduardo is totally live for a knockout or a submission of his own early, and they're giving us 2.5 rounds. So we've just got to get this thing done before the 2-minute and 31-second mark in the third. Yeah, I like the under 2.5, and this one is a bet that may actually make my official card. Next up, women's bantamweight fight. Stephanie Egger taking on Shanna Young. There are so many questions on this fight. This one is going to be a wild one. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 250. Under is plus 175. Stephanie Egger, strong wrestler, someone who relies really heavily on the grappling. Shanna Young, someone who is coming off of having a baby and a long layoff. So lots of questions. Both of them 0-1 in the UFC so far. And we've just got a sketchy low-level women's MMA fight. Natural logic would tell you that it's going to go over this 2.5 at minus 250. However, you never know. If Shanna Young is not quite in peak physical condition after giving birth, she could give this thing away early. Stephanie Egger, we have yet to see whether or not she's even UFC caliber in the first place, and Shanna Young, she's got that snappy head kick. This is a spot that really could go under, but I can't say that there's value at plus 175 on a women's MMA fight like this. I'm going to go ahead and say over, but I wouldn't be shocked if something crazy happened in this fight and it went under. I would stay away from this total completely. Bantamweight fight, Douglas Silva de Andrade taking on Gaetano Pirrello, and this is a spot where we once again have a total set at 2.5. The over is minus 150, the under is plus 110. Now, I've talked about it. When I look for violence, when I look going under, I like when both of my fighters can contribute in one way or another, whether that be their offensive firepower or whether it be their defensive lacking, some type of way they can help me cash an under ticket. I've got to have it on both sides of the equation. Douglas Silva de Andrade, this guy is a cannon in there. He's dropping into a new, not a new weight class. He's been there before, but he popped up for a little bit. He's going back down to bantamweight. He's older, so we'll see how that weight cut goes on him. It's kind of going to be a fresh experience. Gaetano Pirrello, on the other hand, huge for this weight class. Absolutely massive. These guys are going to size up really, really well, and they both have that offensive output. However, they're both insanely durable. Really, we've seen Pirrello struggle with the grappling. It's been a problem when people take him down, rinse, and repeat, and that's not really Douglas's game. And that's really the problem here. If Douglas goes out and wrestles, I think he'd be live for a submission, but we can't count on him doing that. The guy likes to bang, and we've seen him in there with some of the best, like Peter Yan. He's been knocked out by a lot of those guys that are the best, though. So if he plays into this world champion striker's game, he could go down again. So both of these guys definitely have the offensive upside for this under 2.5 to cash, but they're both tough. They're both durable, and if this is going to be a technical striking match, it absolutely could go the full 15, so I really don't want to bet against either of these guys breaking when neither one is really going to give up that win condition, in my opinion. So I'm going to say over 2.5 at minus 150 is going to be my pick, but I'm not betting this one. Lightweight fight coming up next. Devonte Smith taking on Jamie Mullarkey. And what we've got here is a total set at 1.5. Over 1.5 is minus 175. The under 1.5 is plus 125. And even though we try to stay away from this, we always end up doing it 2 or 3 fights every single show. This is one of those binary fights. If you think this thing goes under, it's probably because you like Devonte Smith. This guy's a firecracker. He's long, he's rangy, he hits super hard. If you think this thing goes over, it's because you're counting on the toughness, the durability, the grappling of Jamie Mullarkey. Mullarkey's going to be the slightly smaller fighter. If he can get in on the hips of Devonte Smith, take him down, grind away, stay tough, stay durable, keep himself in this fight, protect himself when it's at striking, he probably wins this fight maybe with a late finish or a decision, whereas Devonte Smith, if he wins this fight, it's probably because he does what he does and he gets off on the striking and clips this kid early and puts him away. Even if Devonte Smith does get that finish, it could come after 1.5. So both these guys potentially can win after that 1.5 round mark. And I do think Jamie Mullarkey is tough enough to hang in there. So I'm going to say over 1.5. Although with the firepower both of them are capable of, I wouldn't really feel comfortable laying minus 175 for it to go over. But I will say over 1.5 in this lightweight fight. Women's bantamweight matchup here. Bethe Correia taking on Karol Rosa. Women's MMA at its finest. Total here set at 2.5. The over is minus 325. The under is plus 250. This one should go over. I mean, both of these women are extremely strong and powerful, extremely durable, though Bethe is not someone who's been easy to finish, except for maybe the best women in the division. But Karol Rosa, she is a big-time up-and-comer that a lot of us are excited about. She's got those grappling chops, and if she can crack that takedown defense of Bethe Correia and get her on the mat, I think she can absolutely do some work there. And I think on the feet she does have a higher output, so I think she's got the chance for a knockout, but that's really the only side I see a finish coming from. I do not expect Bethe Correia to knock out Karol Rosa, and I don't really see a submission from either one of them unless it's a club and sub type of situation. Considering how tough and durable they both are, I have to say over 2.5 here, even though I wouldn't be shocked at all if Karol Rosa shows us she's ready for that next level and she ends up getting some kind of a TKO stoppage. Women's flyweight fight, Antonina Shevchenko taking on Casey O'Neill, the lesser of the Shevchenko sisters, putting that name on the line here against the UFC's newest darling, the young up-and-comer Casey O'Neill. Undefeated prospect. We've got a 2.5 round total on this one. Over is minus 115, under is plus 100 even money. And if that tells you anything about these women, the UFC knows full well that they're capable of finishing. The bookmakers know full well that they're capable of finishing because you don't get pick-em price tags on women's MMA totals. Shevchenko is a world-class striker. We know that. Casey O'Neill is a solid striker. She's tough, she's mean, she's nasty, but she's got holes in that striking game. We have seen her clipped. We have seen her hurt. Antonina Shevchenko really struggles with the takedown defense, and we have seen Casey O'Neill with that body lock, with that physical power, just rip people to the floor, and then they're at her mercy once they're on the ground. She's nasty with her submissions. She's nasty with her ground and pound. Antonina Shevchenko is no fish out of water in the jiu-jitsu realm, though, even though in wrestling she kind of gets stuck on her back. Her jiu-jitsu is pretty sharp. She's got some good offensive submissions, believe it or not. I think there's a lot of opportunity for this fight to finish, but I can't argue value on a women's MMA fight being even money to go under 2.5. I think it's more likely that we're getting value on the over 2.5 and that both these women will be able to stay strong in this fight and survive until it gets to a judge's scorecards, because that's more often than not how it happens. I think Antonina Shevchenko is a massive step up for Casey O'Neill, and I've kind of got the hot take that maybe she pulls off something, lands one of those big power shots and puts Casey O'Neill down. She takes that first ever L for her career, but Casey O'Neill is really tough. She has taken some big shots before, but she's always been able to survive them and walk through them. So even if she is outclassed in this spot, even if she can't get the fight to the ground, she could end up grinding her way to a decision, even if she gets outstruck on the feet by the more seasoned striker. So I think we got to look at the over 2.5 in this spot, but again, it's not really a fight that I'm planning on betting myself. Lightweight fight to wrap up the preliminary card portion of the evening. Joe Solecki taking on Jared Gordon. All of you know my opinion on Jared Gordon if you've been watching this show for a while. I think the guy is a fraud. I know he's got some solid skills, but I don't think he's going to survive against any tough level of competition, especially at lightweight. When he's down at 145, he can bully his opponents around the cage because he misses weight by 5 pounds every damn time and has an unfair advantage. But up at 155, he can't hang with these big boys. He just seems undersized. He seems to struggle, and that chin issue is always something that's glaring and there for the taking. At 145, guys were not able to take advantage of it, though. Let's see at 155, now that he's kind of back in the mid to low end of the pack, how that ends up playing out. Total set at 2.5. Over is minus 200. Under is plus 150. And both these guys are fully capable of finishing. Jared Gordon has that chin problem, which would lend itself towards the under, but his offense is wrestle, 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 wrestle. I say he's capable of finishing, but I don't think he's capable of finishing a guy as tough as Joe Solecki. Joe is a world-class BJJ player, and he's not a guy that we've had any durability concerns with. I don't think Jared Gordon is going to TKO this guy. I think if it gets to the ground, Jared Gordon's going to have his hands full just trying to keep Joe Solecki down. And if he's not submitting Joe Solecki, let's be real. Let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. Let's be real. He's not submitting Joe Solecki. So Joe Solecki, on the flip side of this thing, he's got underrated hands. He's got better boxing than people give him credit for. And his main path to victory is that submission advantage. He's going to be the better BJJ player of the two. But Jared Gordon, he is not a slouch when it comes to BJJ. He's got the defensive end of it at least checked off. So I don't know if Joe Solecki is going to be able to submit Jared Gordon either. And if he does, it's probably because he's playing too much off of his back on the ground. And that really plays into Jared Gordon's win condition of this thing going over. So if we have a striker, a grappler versus grappler striking match, which we see from time to time when two guys are really solid in one area, they fight it out in the area where both them think they have a slight advantage. This thing could probably go 15 minutes. I wouldn't be shocked if Joe Solecki cracks that chin because it's been cracked so many times for Jared Gordon already. But more than likely, this thing ends up going over. I don't like that minus 200 price tag, but I do think it probably ends up getting to the judges' scorecards. Main card time, we've got Alexander the Great Hernandez coming in against Mike Breeden, who is a short notice fill-in, someone who flared out on the Dana White's Contender Series, getting a short notice opportunity here. We've seen this fight before, right? We've absolutely seen Alexander Hernandez. When he gets that step down, he runs through his opponent. We've seen Mike Breeden get caught in submissions before. We've seen him get touched up before. He's got a bit of a problem with the grappling. I like this kid's striking ability on the feet. Definitely not a fish out of water. But I think all of the statistics of this thing go to Alexander Hernandez. He's more muscular, he's stronger, I think he hits harder. I mean, Breeden might be a more technical striker on the feet, but Alexander Hernandez is a far better wrestler, and with the power edge standing, I mean, he can kind of take this thing out however he wants to. Total set at 2.5, or actually total looks like it's set at 1.5 in most places. Over 1.5 is minus 175, the under is plus 125, and I wouldn't want to play this one. I would like the under 2.5. If you have the option for the alternate total, it looks like that's closer to a pick'em price tag, or like minus 125 plus 100 type of situation. You can lay a little bit of juice to go under 2.5 if you have the alternate total available to you. I think that's definitely in play. I think Breeden's going to have to go for broke in this one. I really don't see him finishing Alexander Hernandez, and that's kind of my problem here. I think Alexander Hernandez finishes this fight almost any way he wants to, more often than not. But does he do it early? We've seen him fully capable of doing it early. But if this is going to be a striking game where Alexander likes to play with his food, he likes to play on the feet, there's a chance this thing squeezes over that 1.5. And I don't like paying minus 175 for it to get over 1.5, even though I do think it's going to head that way. Bantamweight fight, Aspen lad taking on Macy Chiasson. Total set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 200. Under 2.5 is plus 150. And this is a spot where I would actually be more inclined to take that shot on the violence side of women's MMA. Both of these women, when they're at their best, are finishers. Macy Chiasson, super tall, super long, good Muay Thai, trains with the men over at totally blank and Fortis MMA. She trains with all the boys at Fortis MMA, and she hits hard. She really hits hard. Aspen lad, we've seen her in her first only loss in the UFC. She did take a big shot and get put down, but that was after a rough weight cut. That's going to really play into that read a whole heck of a lot. Aspen lad on the other side of this thing, strong, powerful, tanky woman, wrestles, likes to get people to the floor, and then just really mess them up once she gets them on the ground. That hellish ground and pound that she unleashes on people once they get there. I think there's definitely finish upside on both of these women, but again, they've only lost once apiece, so there's not a whole lot of blueprint for how do you beat them and how do you finish them when you do. I do think Aspen lad can probably win this thing via grappling, via decision. I do think Macy Chiasson could win this thing by knockout on the feet. If she's able to defend the takedowns, then she could coast to a 15-minute decision victory. Aspen lad is tough enough, I think, to tank some of that damage on the feet, but if it hits the floor, lad is fully available for a knockout or a submission win of her own. With the finishing upside of both of these women, I kind of feel like it's going to go under 1.5, but wait, I've said this before, wait again for the face-offs. We got to wait to see the weigh-ins on Friday because both of them have struggled on the scale and had health issues and things like that. We got to see what they look like right before they step into the cage. If either one of them looks like they have a slight chink in the armor, then that under 2.5 is much more enticing to me. Middleweight fight up next, Misha Cirkunov taking on Krzysztof Jotko. Total here is 1.5. The over 1.5 is -145. The under 1.5 is +125. And again, this is one of those binary fights. Over 1.5, you're looking at Krzysztof Jotko. This guy, all he does is he grinds people out. He's a generalist. He's not amazing anywhere, but he likes to slow the pace of the fight down and grind you out. He'll pin you up against the fence. He'll make it boring. He'll stay safe at distance and then get himself in where he does his best work. But he's not really wowing anybody with the finishes. The wild card of this thing, though, is Misha Cirkunov. This guy is a live and die by the sword type of fighter. So even against opponents who normally go the distance, he tends to blow his wad early. And if he doesn't get the finish, he ends up leaving himself open to being finished. And he's cutting down to 185 here in this spot for the first time. We're questioning how he's going to look. We need to see him on the scales on Saturday because if he has a rough cut, then he's only going to have one round of gas in him. And in that case, again, he still has a path to victory, but if he doesn't get the finish early, then he probably gets finished pretty quickly himself thereafter. So I think the under 1.5 at plus money is probably the way to go in this spot. I fully expect that finish to come from the Misha Cirkunov side of things, but at the same time, Misha just leaves himself completely defenseless unless he changes his game plan, unless he works something different and has a completely different form than we've seen him in prior to this fight. I expect him to probably be the same old Misha Cirkunov we're used to, and this fight probably ends early. So I'm going to say under 1.5. Welterweight fight up next, Alex Cowboy Oliveira taking on Niko Price. And we've got a total set once again at 1.5. Over 1.5, -150, under 1.5, +110. And this is yet another spot where I would look for violence. Both these guys are bangers. Both these guys come to fight. And we've seen them both on the wrong side of a couple of fights recently. They both really could use a win to reestablish themselves in the UFC. And they both kind of tend to force a firefight. I mean, Niko especially forces a firefight. This guy doesn't go in there with a wrestling-heavy game plan. He's not looking to grind out the clock. Never. It doesn't matter how many times you knock Niko Price out. He is going to come in and force a war every single time he steps in the cage. That's just who he is. So even though I can see Alex Oliveira kind of looking for that grappling, looking for that ground game, looking to get the wrestling going, I think Niko Price is going to make him fight. And if Alex Oliveira can't get those takedowns, Niko Price is going to rough him up on the feet. And when we've seen Alex Oliveira in a striking match, we've seen him clubbed, we've seen him tired, and usually he ends up tapping. Hot take, Niko Price, 12-1. I may be sprinkling because we know that Alex Oliveira is going to look to engage in the grappling, and Niko Price is more than dangerous on the ground. Even though usually he likes to work with his hands, he'll take what you give him. I think there's an opening for Niko Price by sub, but more than that, I think the under is totally in play with the amount of violence on both sides of this thing. The problem is the durability of Niko. I know that Alex Oliveira is capable of finishing, but with his wrestling-heavy game plan and the durability of Niko Price, it could squeeze over that 1.5. This is another spot where I would buy down to the 2.5 alternate total if you can get it, about -140, -150, or just take fight doesn't go the decision at -200. I don't know that this one hits the judges' scorecards with the way that these two guys fight, but that's not one I'm totally convicted on. Don't run out and spend all your money on it. I'm not even sure I'm betting it myself. I'm definitely going to sprinkle Niko Price by submission. I may sprinkle Niko Price inside the distance, but I'm not sure I'm playing the total on this one. Middleweight fight, Kevin Holland taking on Kyle Daukaus. Total here set at 2.5. Over 2.5, -155. Under 2.5 is +135. And I was going to say it's a binary fight. We kind of have to pick our side here, but it's not really. We have seen Kevin Holland go 15 minutes before. We have seen Kyle Daukaus go 15 minutes before. We've seen Kevin Holland knock people out in the first round. We have seen Kyle Daukaus choke people out early. Both these guys are fully capable of going the full distance or finishing quickly. We've seen that on both sides of the fight. It just really all comes down to game script, right? The big question is Kevin Holland's takedown defense. Can Kyle Daukaus wrestle this man to the floor? If he can, it's probably going over. If he can't, this is going to be a stand-up war, and one of these guys is going down. And I think Kevin Holland is probably winning by knockout at that stage. So I'm going to go ahead and say the under 2.5, even though we're not supposed to be picking fighters here. Kyle Daukaus is a nasty submission artist, so if he's able to control Kevin Holland on the mat, there's the chance he can win by submission. But Holland is a BJJ black belt. We've seen him out-wrestled by big, tough guys before, and he just hangs around. We've seen him go 25 minutes with title contenders because they can't do anything with him once they get him on the mat. It takes everything they've got just to hold him there. So I don't know that Kyle Daukaus is actually going to be able to get some kind of a finish there, but I've got a feeling that somebody's finishing this fight somewhere. Probably Kevin Holland, but can't count out the Daukaus side of things. So I'm going to say under 2.5 at +1. It looks like it's anywhere from +115 to +120 out there. Main event time. Thiago Santos taking on Johnny Walker. 5-round main event. We are not going to need 5 rounds for this fight, folks. I can tell you that much. The total set at 1.5. The over is -120. The under is -120. It looks like it's a pick'em. There is some slight juice in some places. Under is -125, with the over being -105. So the bookies are expecting this fight to finish and finish early. Based on what we've seen from Johnny Walker, I can't say I'm much surprised. We've got big questions around this one. Thiago Santos, getting old. Dude has no knees anymore, but he's still got that power. And when Thiago rips, boy does he rip. Johnny Walker, we've seen some durability questions. We've seen some issues with that chin. He puts himself right in the fire time and time again, and he's paid for it a couple of times. But he's got that offensive firepower on the flip side. This man is capable of knocking just about anybody out at light heavyweight. We've also seen him engage in the grappling a little bit more recently. Usually it's his opponents trying to wrestle him to the floor. And this is a spot where I don't know that I expect Thiago Santos to wrestle. Not really his game plan. But if he is out fast twitch muscled by a younger fighter, a young buck that's got more speed and more knockout power than him at this stage of his career, he may look to change levels and put this thing on the ground. And if he does that, this thing will easily squeeze over that 1.5, because Johnny Walker will likely need to rely on a gas tank and maybe try to outweight Thiago Santos, the older fighter, get this thing into the second or the third round. He's been on interviews. We went on Ariel Helwani's show, and he talked about wanting to go into hell. He wants to go deep into the waters. He wants to go to that dark place and then show that he's got that championship caliber inside of him, which kind of leads me to believe that this may not be over early. This fight may get into the second or the third round before we actually see a finish. But with the offensive firepower, the chin concerns, I can't argue anybody wanting to take that under 1.5 on this fight, because this thing could be over in about 60 seconds. So my gut kind of says over 1.5, but there's a lot of fingers pointing to that under cashing. So I can't really, with any confidence, give you advice on which way to bet this one. Again, my gut says over 1.5. I'm not going to bet this total, because there's no way I can bet a Johnny Walker fight over 1.5, but I actually do think it squeezes over that 1.5 rounds. That's the Total Takedown, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Good luck on all your degenerate action. Let's roll.